What's happening, guys? Another Sunday scan, and thank you guys for tuning in. This is the first scan that I don't have any crazy A-plus type setups. I'm prepared, but I'm just not super excited about any names, which is fine because the last couple days, we've had ridiculous moves, intraday, and forget Tesla for a minute, but BIIB had news last week, and it just shot up, and it didn't just stop at $20, $30, $50, $60. It just kept on going, and then it ended up retracing about $20, $30 a share. So it gave a great opportunity intraday, and it was something that I wasn't prepared for, from the night before, but it was something that shot up on scan based off of the news. So there's been a lot of great opportunities left and right, and it has come down to focus. I personally felt super exhausted last week. Every single day, I was really exhausted by the end of the day. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I was fine Thursday, Friday. But that happens sometimes when you're trading stuff that you're not necessarily prepared for, or in my case, you're overstaying on a lot of different names. Tesla, I had just incredible entries every single time. I waited for it. Stocked it. As soon as it started to parabolic, I had great entries, good like $3 to $4 maybe max risk for that potential unwind of 20, 30, 40, $50. And it was great. However, as I've admitted many times, I'm a very stubborn trader. So there was one great trade that I had, I think it was last week, and unwound. And ended up coming, all the way back up. And I had a similar trade like that this week where I shorted, I think it was 933, and I was using 940 as kind of my buffer. And I basically was using high day. So I think the high day prior was 939.70 or something, and it went up and it kissed 940, came back down. And it went down straight, 70, $80. And I held the whole thing. And then Citron came out and basically was negative about it. And I kind of was letting it work. I was in the mode of all right, I've got such huge padding, like I might as well let this thing unwind because it's ran up so much. It's probably going to unwind maybe another 50, 60, $70. And within 3 candles, maybe 4, it went up $40. And so I went from being up 70, $80 a share to not up 70, $80 a share, probably like 60, 70 overall from, I had a couple ads, to immediately $40 in 3 or 4 minutes. Now I only got maybe a $20 padding. And then, again, going back to me being stubborn, well, I was just up a lot more. Maybe I'll wait. And then it starts to grind. Maybe I'll wait a little longer. Starts to grind. So now all of a sudden it's only 10 and then 5, and then you're left with, all right, do I just stop out at flat? Do I just take it off? What do you do? So I had a couple days of just total minimization of Tesla, which is super tiring, as well as when you're trading something that, not necessarily that I wasn't comfortable with, but when you're trading something that you're not 100% comfortable, whereas let's compare it to a Y10 or BNTC on Friday, right? So I got short, and I'm letting it work. And every single rebound, it's failing. I'm comfortable. I'm relaxed. I'm not watching every tick. I'm letting it work on the side when I'm doing other things, right? Whereas Tesla, you just have to be zoned all day. And, like we've talked about, when you have your blinders on, you're missing everything over here and everything over here. And when that happens, you're missing all these other A-plus type setups. So unfortunately, I missed a lot of other names that I was prepared for because, I was focused on the crazy one. And, it's all right, screwed up, but it was good trades overall, good opportunities. But I definitely turned a lot of big wins into losses, a lot of big wins into minimizations, and I could have done quite a bit better. And that all comes down, it's not a shoulda, coulda, woulda. I should have held, I should have done this, I should have done that. It did come down to just the process. And I didn't really have a game plan. as far as covers. I didn't really think about, all right, if I nail this, which I did, and it flushes out, where's a good cover spot? Where is the prior line that it's been holding that I need to maybe take some off? And most of the time, I'm pretty good with that, but just not this particular time. So that was Monday through Wednesday of like really zoned in, focused, watching every single tick on Tesla. But we did have some great opportunities with MYO. Super expensive borrow, but a very, very clean move. If you were too aggressive or tried to find the top, then you ran into trouble. But there was the day that I shorted it at about 36 or 37 pre-market, let it fade all the way down towards the low 20s. Friday was even really nice. The borrow cost came down a little bit, and in my opinion, most people are not holding it over short. Just the neg rate is way too high. If they end up offering, it's got to go to like $5 to really make a decent spread, depending on how many days you hold it. So either way, that was a great opportunity. And then because MYO went, it started to spark up all the low floats, and even for no reason at all. Y10 started to go on a 13D, I think, a 13D amendment or 13D. I think it was just 13D. And it just took off. And so that was a great opportunity. I had that one long Thursday into Friday. So then I sold that on the gap. I was hoping / expecting a gap to 12 and a potential circuit halt. When a newsletter came on it, a particular newsletter that always buys, all the momentum names. So I was prepared and thinking that we'd probably get a 12 circuit halt type move. And because of that, I was already short, but I did not have more than about probably 25-30% of my position leading into the market. And that's something that I tend to try to do unless it's heavy volume. On any of these thin names, I really do not want to get too involved pre-market, just because you don't know if they're just trying to trap all pre-market and then you find out at market open that they had a game plan. I'd rather see it off the opens, make sure a bunch of people buy the breakout, get stuffed, and give me that opportunity to get short. And as you saw with the trade that I posted on Y10, I then went to half size and full size after VWAP confirmed, and I covered at the close. BNTC was very similar. And I think what's more, not necessarily impressive, but more important is not the patience on the unwind that I had, but the patience of not trying to find the top. There was a point where it started to skip up. And that wasn't a huge size trade at all. I borrowed a couple thousand shares and then they ran out. But my first entry was not big at all. And, I want to start in there. I want to dabble in there. But I need to be prepared in case another $2 or $3 happens. But I took a little bit of a dabble because it was starting to get a little out of hand. And I figured that at some point, that circuit halt, it's either going to go into another one and then slam down, or that was it. And that's exactly what happened. It slammed down into a circuit halt. I added some more, and covered at the close. That also I posted on Instagram if you guys want to check it out. So the rest of the trades I went over. I had two what I would call stubborn trades this week. WWE was the first one that I talked about in the room, where I got short before it kind of proved itself. And if you go back to Thursday's move, these are the types of trades that I have probably the most difficulty with, where they flush out and then it's just a steady bid, and it doesn't. I think I'm pretty good when it does a little bit of a trend, but when it's just a little steady bid and it just does not dip, that's when I really get my rules tested. And fortunately I didn't size in. Just like I said, I was waiting for key levels to top out before I started in with any size. But that doesn't mean that I still can't get ran over a little bit on my starter size. And so I did get in there. I stopped out. I started to get back in there again, and it really did have a nice little leg up. And had I been patient, like I was on BNTC, I would have waited for it to parabolic. I would have seen it a lot clearer. And because I was already in the position, what I call pre-exhausted myself, and therefore I wasn't able to get a really good entry after that exhaustion candle. So if you go back to Thursday's chart on WWE, you'll see where it kind of just got walked up, sped up about $1.50, $2 almost within maybe 5 to 7 minutes or so, and then slam right back down. And at that point, I started to scale in, and it was nice unwind. But again, I wasn't able to be aggressive just because I was already there. And so then on Friday, had a similar situation on MYGN, and MYGN was fine. You know, I got a nice buck 20 off the open, but I covered half, and then I put on some more. I covered half, and then it started to kind of grind out, and it was the same kind of situation where it's just like, you know, it's going a little higher, a little higher, a little higher, a little higher, and that kind of situation, it should either be paying out or get out, and that was the two stubborn trades I would say this week where I probably could have used that energy and focus elsewhere and done a lot better. But, you know, it happens. They sneak up on you, and really what it comes down to is just make sure that you do have a plan on each name. And if you don't, always recheck in with that dial like we talked about last week. Last but not least, I think it's important to kind of talk about, you know, Tesla was a great trade for a lot of people. And for other people, it pissed off a lot of people because you knew you should have performed better. You were early. You were too aggressive. You stopped out the wrong time. You got too biased. You know, same kind of situations that I was talking about earlier for myself. But just always realize, you know, when you're killing it, when you're doing really, really well, somebody else isn't. And when you're not, or when you are, that other person might not be. So everybody goes through their cycles. So don't be discouraged if, you know, you screwed up or you missed out on this big opportunity. It's going to be more. But the key is just not pre-exhausting yourself before that trade opportunity comes. And, you know, for some, it might have been a wake-up call that, you know, this was one of the few in the lifetime opportunities, the ones that you'll remember, the ones that everybody will be talking about. It'll be a sticking point for many years to come. When those opportunities happen, you don't want to screw them up. And unfortunately, we do at times. So the other thing somebody else was asking me in the room, you know, what's a good way to kind of, not necessarily, I guess, refocus and whatnot. But the best thing you can do is just take it off watch, right? So if you know you've got that itch and there's just not that edge, just take it off watch. You'll be surprised and relieved at how much more focus and you know, energy it doesn't suck from you if it's not even on your radar. And you know, that's, in my opinion, a very easy way to combat that, because if you go back and you review Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there was some really incredible trades. Not Tesla, but other A-plus type setups that you missed because you were focused on stuff that you might not have had as good of an edge. So, let's get into this week, and I think this will be a shorter scan than usual as far as talking about things, just because, like I said, I'm not crazy excited about anything on Monday. There's gonna be a lot. It's earnings season. There's gonna be stuff left and right. There was Twitter this week. There was Uber this week. There was WWE on news, earnings, whatever it was this week. There was just left and right. They're flying all over the place. So I'm not afraid of not having a trade on Monday by any means. But there is nothing here where I am like, all right, this is exactly what I'm going to do. I am prepared. It's coming. This is a huge opportunity because, like I've said before, there's maybe 3 to 4 A+ opportunities a month. And, some weeks you're going to have them, some weeks you're not. And we had like 12 in the prior weeks, right? So, abnormal amount of setups last week, not as many setups this week. That's okay. There's still a lot of opportunity there. So anyway, let's get into it. So CODX is a coronavirus type play, which it's interesting to note and remind yourself too when you're playing these things. AEMD just got halted by the SEC because questions of the accuracy, promoters, this and that about coronavirus. So basically, all these next day coronavirus type companies that we've talked about. That never had mentioned anything about this, but just tried to get into the news somehow, tried to get into the sector to get volume. All of these are possibilities for halts. Not to scare you out of all these different names, but at the end of the day, it's possible, right? Same thing with NNVC. NNVC is known to do this year after year after year. I'm sure they have good lawyers and they write things certain ways to combat that. But at the end of the day, we talked about this and compared it to a chameleon changing colors and whatnot. It's the same old pump and dump trash that you see every single time. And I had tweeted out a piece on this warning everybody at 17. And whether or not it went a little bit higher, it didn't. But whether or not, like I said, even if it goes a little bit higher, just know what you own. Because as soon as the music stops, it's over. And, that's exactly what happened. Completely unwound and came apart. So with that said, CODX, I think they know the music's about to stop on the sector overall. So, they needed to wait to do a much bigger raise. They did a small raise like a week ago or so, and I'm sure they're eager to do another one. They put out one PR, they put out a second PR, so they're probably getting ready to do the next big raise. So I think everybody's on that same page. I think everybody knows that. So what that means is you have to be one step better. You got to be, don't force the trade. Wait for it to come to you. Wait for that exhaustion point of other shorts to come out, and let's look for that proper opportunity. So they know exactly what they're doing. They're putting out 330 PRs. They're squeezing all the shorts. They're keeping it liquid. They're not stupid. So they pretty much kept it in a nice little range on Friday between 3 and 310. So ideally, maybe they put out one more PR. Maybe they do something stupid. Who knows? But 320s push. Look for it to fail, and then unwind, ideally. Or midday raise, something like that. BNTC. This was a beautiful one. I was really happy with my patience. In a perfect world, we get back up towards 8. Everybody gets excited. They think it's going to be another runner, and it gives us another opportunity to reload. But for me, this is like a quiet trade, just like I said. On this circuit up, I said, this is a quiet trade for me now, but I'm looking forward to unwind. And, so it's not a trade that I'm going to alert because it's a tiny float. And, if it gets crowded on the wrong side, then, just like a newsletter buying it, what happens after that? Right down. So, and that's actually exactly what happened over here. So with that said, higher the better. And ideally backside there. Same thing with Y10. This was a fantastic opportunity. This started the rip on Thursday, came back in, and that's where I bought after hours. I didn't actually buy any of that rip on Thursday. I bought the dip after hours. I sold some into the strength, and then I ended up selling the rest pre-market. Started dabble, and I waited for the volume and the action and the newsletter to buy. And you guys can see the trade. I posted it on Instagram. But then I went full size versus the basically kind of over and under VWAP level. and let it go all day. So ideally, we get another push back up towards 920s, 930s before it ends up going all the way back to 6. It's gonna lose a lot of volume. So, what was a nice, thick, high volume type trader on Friday, it's not going to be the same next week. It's going to be a lot more choppy. So make sure you build yourself some room to be not necessarily wrong, but to wiggle. Make sure you have a little bit of room there. mRNA, very clean trade. Nice idea in the room. It was hitting scans all day. Mentioned it a bunch of times. Started to speed up and pretty strong close. Ideally 2280s pullback, week open, consolidate, rip up red to green. That's something that I would take. This NLOK. This one I typically look for situations like this. I call this kind of like a transitional day where it has a huge gap up, consolidates, starts to go, but doesn't really do anything. Comes, right back in. And so usually the move is the next day. And whether or not it gaps up and it hits maybe 20s and fades off, or it has a little bit of a weak open, retest this 1960s support or so, and then ramps up. And typically, if that is the case and it ramps up, I like to look for it to go back and retest the prior day's highs. So that's that one. SLCA, it's been a nice little trend join. These are the wicks we talk about. Nice little week opens and potential breakout. We're coming up on some key levels here on the daily chart. So that's of interest. BILI, beautiful breakout, big chart, great volume. Really strong on Thursday, and then just nobody home on Friday. So I was interested in looking at this as a potential big breakout play. So I compared it to, sort of this setup here on LK. So you can kind of see it started to break out, huge, and then came back in. Huge, comes back in. Huge, comes back in. And so that's what I'm thinking about here on this BILI. I'm thinking that it has the potential to do a major breakout, just like LK. But with that said, you got to be prepared for candles like this. So, your edge is not buying the breakout. Your edge is buying the flushes as long as the trend is holding. And I'll get into that a little bit with SPCE in a minute, just to kind of reevaluate that trade idea as well. MYGN, higher the better. This is every single time, it does the same thing. And, it had I forget what this news was, but whatever it was, a couple days later, earnings, or they took it back. I forget exactly what it was, but it was kind of, it wasn't, it was sketchy. But ended up coming all the way back, and then bam, comes right back. They buy it again, walk it all the way back. Bam, we're right back here. But this time, we're lower. So every single time they've supported it, it's come back. So I want to see weakness. I want to see if they don't hold it this time, I think we're going to get the 18s, 18, 17, 16, some type of major unwind. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. But for now, you should assume that it's just going to do the same as last time, because obviously there's somebody there. AMRN, this one I probably shouldn't put on video, because anytime I mention it on Twitter, they come after me. This is a very big cult stock. If you say anything negative about it, then you are on. You'll get like 19 replies right away about how wrong you are. And I basically thought this was sell the news, and I've been bearish on pretty much every big push I've expected to fail. I would have liked to trade it better or kept it on a better watch, but one of the scans prior and many of the watch list, my thought process was that eventually it's going to come back and fill this gap and then unwind from there. And the thought process is this is a very, very retail heavy name. And so whenever that happens, you get that nice, move, and it always lasts longer than you think. But then when it starts to really unwind, then you start to get this pullback, but then you get that panic flush. And that's what I think we could potentially get near term where it's, you margin out a few people. You've got all these dip buyers, dip buying, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh boy, now what? And it flushes out and it's down $1, $2. And not to say that it's not going to bounce back. I think it will have a good rebound opportunity, but I would be cautious with trying to find the bottom here, because we could easily go all the way back towards the lows. So far, great opportunities, good unwinds on the daily, and working well. SONO, this one, nice gap up, unwind all day. My goal would be maybe a push up here towards this 1430s, 1420s, and then 1380s. That would be great. Good volume, 7-8 million the day before, 6 million yesterday, Friday. TWOU, nothing I'm too crazy about, but I want to stay familiar with the chart. If you look at the daily, we're coming up on some very key levels. 27 right here. We closed above the other prior tops, 25 over here. So I'm just going to let it do its thing, and I'm going to be looking to join the fade the day that it wants to fade. Typically, it does unwind pretty nicely. That's why it's on my radar. And it's got some of those days where it's just a major unwind. So, if we've learned anything, seen anything, sometimes like WWE comes back strong and then the next day nobody's home. So point here is it's possible nobody's home on Monday. And if that's the case, we could, unwind. This is the type that can pull back $3 or $4. That's why I'm interested. I'm not saying that I think it's going to, but I want to be prepared in the event that it does pull back and not underestimate it, because it is the type to do it. And that's half the battle, is understanding which ones are the types to actually get that big unwind going. ZGNX, big unwind here. I got part of it. I joined it over in this area here and faded it during the day. It was a watch for the open. I missed it. So typically situations like this, I'll trade it for 1 or 2 more days. Higher the better. Looking for a seller to come back in, join that fade. Then I just have a couple more. Again, I'm not trying to overload with tickers. I'm just reviewing. Those that I've gone over so far are pretty much my main or focus names. The main watches for me were CODX, BNTC, Y10, and MRNA. That's 4. The other ones I want to stay familiar with. And then the last couple that I was going to go over is SPCE. I've been swinging this, and the thought process is not, all right, I got to get long. It's going, it's coming, it's going to break out. And I always get nervous saying that I like something long, because then if it pulls back $1, everybody is like, hey, are you still long? What do you think? What's your thought process? Where's your stop? Where's this? And people always act first and then ask questions later. And so the thought process is lower the better. But what I want to see is I want to see it starting to get absorbed, just like we've talked about before. See these wicks? I want to see it starting to get absorbed off all the dips. I want it to pull back, come back up higher. Come back, come back up higher. Pull back, come back up higher. And at that point, if it does start to prove me right, over that 1980-20 level, at that point, probably get into the next level of size. And then if it goes 22-25, then I might add some more. And then if it starts to parabolic, now I've got all this padding to risk. So we'll see what happens, but that's the kind of the thought process on something like that. BLNK, we spent a lot of time talking about this as well. This one, I would expect nothing. And what I would do is I would put a alert at 280s. Basically this top level right here, you can kind of see the top here. I think that Thursday was one of those days where they tried to clean the stock up. It's always a dirty name, a lot of paper, and maybe they've got a plan, maybe they've got some types of PRs coming, things like that. But to me, it felt like it was a little bit of a trend change type day. But until we're proven that it wants to hold over those 280s, you have to assume it's going to fail. So I had bought the flush as just a small amount just to be there, and then if 280 starts to base and 320, then I would scale accordingly. But what I liked about it was the volume was massive, and then as it's coming down, it was super thick. And it was SSR, so there's a bunch of offers coming down. They kept on swiping. So I like that because, one, that brings in shorts. Two, it really, the only time you can really accumulate a decent amount of size is heavy volume, panic, and all these bag holders that just chased it up, are selling out. So in my head, I'm thinking maybe that's the day that somebody came in, took a position for whatever they've got planned. And if that's the case, then I want to use 280s as my guide to kind of confirm my thesis. And I'm not talking it's 280, 281. I'm talking, it starts to set up and base at 280s and form a trend off that level. CHRS, big picture idea. Nice trend on Friday, but the daily chart, I really like the setup here. And, it's starting to curl up. Nice little gearing up action coming on a key level here, so maybe we get a nice little breakout. Staying familiar with WWE, same thing we talked about. AIMT was another nice one this week, and I still think we can get some unwind here. The thought process that was on scan last Sunday, I said I wanted to short. It was expected. I wanted to short it, and that was this day right here. So I did get short pre-market, and after, during the regular market hours over 36. Ended up being great. They ended up raising at 31.97, and so the day that they raised, somebody brought up a valid point in the room that people might have been looking for a buyout from Nestle, and they didn't. So therefore, it might sell off on that. And I mentioned on Wednesday and Thursday that I think a lot of people are putting too much. They're using that 31.97 as a reason to buy, and it's under 31.97. I should probably add because they just raised up here, and what that does is it brings in all these retail type buyers. Similar situation as AMRN, right? And then they buy, and it washes out. And I think that's what we're coming into here. I think we could have a nice little washout. My goal has been to short all strength the last couple days. And so far, it's been a fantastic trade opportunity for those that got it. And that's about it. Pins and KOD. Pins, I just want to stay familiar in case there's nothing else. Big range on Friday. Most of it happened right at the open. You can see here VWAP seller. So, this is what I look for. Look left. You can see resistance held very well. You can see how VWAP held as resistance and then ended up unwinding. You can also, look left for support. So you know that 27, I guess it was 2707. So 2710, 27 was a key level. Breaks, unwinds. KOD, I just want to stay familiar. The day this fails, I think it pulls back $5 or $10. So it's very clean right now. You should assume that it's going to keep on going and going and going and going. Don't try to step in front, but the day that it takes a break is the day that I want to be there. So again, went over a lot of charts. I always try to go through a bunch of charts just to stay familiar with them, get a feel for them, and again, my main watches. I gave you the four main watches, but I have a feeling that my main watches are going to probably be 2 from scan, and then 2 or 3 off the open, based on earnings in the morning on Monday, or based on some type of PR. As I mentioned, MYO brought back a lot of sympathy type low float stuff. So people have been looking for low floaters and just kind of buying them at any cost. For example, anything with a recent reverse split with a low float. So like I said, we had Y10. I think BNTC was actually a reverse split recently. And then even NRBO, another one that's a sub-mil float. and that one started to go, and that was something that I had traded. And like I said in the room, there's no volume on it, but if people are going to chase $15 to $20, I'm a seller, and you know I was. So keep an eye. There is an edge with these thin ones, but there is a big risk with it because you know if they're running for no reason, you know then as soon as the music stops, the music stops. So just be aware of what kind of where we're at in that. Not necessarily sector, but in that momentum. You know, is everybody still getting paid to chase stuff? And if the answer is yes, then great. Go for it. But as soon as they start, you know, MYO, as soon as they raise, as soon as a few others do an intraday offering, that stuff's gonna, you know, pull back and end quickly. So you want to be super, super cautious, especially with these thin, low float type names. But for now, it's great because newsletters are trying to push them, and they're giving us some serious opportunities like Y10 and BNTC on Friday. So that's it for me. If you guys have any questions about the chat room, reach out, use the comment section. I have Bottom Fishing. You can reach out to me, and we'll get a shirt your way as well. His trading has taken a turn for the better the past 4 months. Deconstructing the trades, the arrows, ticks, and all that kind of stuff, watching the videos, going as far back as YouTube will allow. So you're welcome for putting the scans out. He says thank you. And yes, I hope to see you in the chat sometime soon. So anyway, guys, like I said, comment section below if you guys have questions. Write down your biggest takeaway from the scan tonight. As always, I try to pick somebody, or I do pick somebody each week, and next week we'll do a month of chat for free as well to one person. So that's a good week to get. That's it. Have a good rest of your Sunday.